This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 61 of the DCAU Review. I am your host Cal. With me as he always is, my good brother, Liam. Liam, we're kicking off, hard to believe, month of July already.
Already, yeah.
Brand new month here. And we've, of course, we've switched gears. Last month we covered Superman, and we ended our month of Superman with a very, very pivotal episode, not only for Superman the Animated Series, but for the entire DCAU, which leads us into this week's episode. Liam, we're doing some Justice League this month.
Yeah, we're breaking into season 2 of Justice League. Still, for the time being, we're gonna wait a little while to get into Unlimited, but I wanted to break into Justice League season 2, and what better way to do that than with the season 2 premiere? That being Twilight Parts 1 and 2, and as you mentioned, we covered the Superman episode Legacy last week, and this is another chapter in the incredibly epic and multiple shows spanning Darkseid versus Superman and versus the entire DC Universe storyline.
Yeah, it's a great continuation. Some interesting plot points, some crossovers, some pivotal plot points carried on from Superman the Animated Series. So yeah, well, I mean, what better way to continue to segue from our month of Superman into another series? But
exactly,
through carrying those threads through. So as you mentioned, we're doing Twilight Parts 1 and 2, which was the season premiere of season 2 of Justice League. So let's talk about the plot for the episode, Liam. You got a synopsis for parts 1 and 2 here?
I have a synopsis for part 1 and a different synopsis for part 2.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, yes. And the part 1 synopsis reads as such. Superman's nemesis, Darkseid, reluctantly asks for the Justice League's help in defending his world from Brainiac, forcing Superman to set aside their troubled past for the greater good. Which is, in fact, what happens.
Yes.
And then part 2's synopsis reads as such. Darkseid reveals his true ambitions when he helps Brainiac capture Superman. Batman and Wonder Woman team up with the heroes of New Genesis to defend the planet from Darkseid's attack. Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl attempt to free Superman.
That's a very in-depth, succinct, and to-the-point synopsis, indeed.
And that's basically the plot of the whole episode, as we open...
Our work is done here.
Yes.
Show's over, everybody.
But, as far as the plot goes, it's basically exactly what I just said. It's Darkseid. We open it up with Apocalypse somehow. They're, I guess, in the middle of some kind of space battle, and they go into a galaxy that is supposed to be off limits to Darkseid under the treaty with New Genesis that was first talked about in Superman. And so his army is decimated by New Genesis as a result.
Steppenwolf dies.
Yes, Steppenwolf dies. Desada ends up dying later, although Darkseid kills him.
Yeah, Darkseid decimates his own people. See, I kill my own men.
Right. It's an excellent Mystery Men reference.
Thank you.
But yes, and then from there, Brainiac shows up on Apocalypse, and it seems as though, Superman and the rest of the Justice League have to go defend Apocalypse, and despite Superman hating Darkseid and as we see near the end of the episode, willing to fight him to the death, he sort of reluctantly agrees to go there. But one of the things I liked about it is that Superman's not an idiot in this episode. The whole time he's waiting for the shoe to drop. Yep. So when it finally does happen and he's betrayed, it's less of a oh no and more of a I knew it.
Right. Yeah, and it's almost he almost takes it out on Batman. Batman's the one that has to sort of convince him in this episode that the right moral thing to do. So Batman is clearly somebody that bends the rules when it comes to morality sometimes, and not afraid to push the envelope, the gray in which his life is lived in. Superman seemingly works in black and white.
Yeah.
Does occasionally, depending on, if he decides to stash a known criminal on a island instead of sending her to jail,
right,
as we discussed a few episodes ago. Yeah, okay, maybe here and there he'll bend the rules a little bit. But in general, Superman is a very black and white character. So for Superman to make the moral pronouncement when Darkseid shows up at the Watchtower telling him that Brainiac is not only going to do what he did to Krypton, but then after he steals the information, his whole planet will be destroyed, Superman responds with good. He's not afraid to show his disdain, and Batman has to try and convince him in a way that he kind of appeals to him in a sarcastic, strong way and saying, hey, yeah, we get it. We know why you hate Darkseid, but you got to get over it for the common good here.
Yeah.
Because there are people's lives at stake here,
right,
regardless. So, yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, and I think an interesting part of the plot here and ultimately at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, at the very end of the episode, as Superman and Darkseid are battling to the death, Batman forcibly draws Clark away so that he's not... Basically saves Clark, ultimately, because we're not sure what happened in the explosion. Whether or not an explosion could kill Superman or not, we don't know. But more than likely, Superman would have been hurt to the point where,
right,
something would have happened. Like, you don't know what would have happened. But Batman saves him, and Superman's not exactly happy about it.
No, that's the ending line is he tells him, Bruce, you're not always right. And there's a lot of... And one of the things I liked about that, and we talked about that maybe when we first started reviewing Season 1 of Justice League, is... And to help the show stand on its own, there isn't a ton of callbacks in Season 1 to the previous series. Maybe a lot, obviously, like the Joker and Lex Luthor in it, and there's some minor. But for the most part, it's Justice League Season 1 is very much just its own tight-knit adventure show featuring these superheroes.
Right.
This one draws on so much of the history of the DCAU, as we mentioned, from the Legacy that we reviewed last week, to you can go back through all those Darkseid and Superman episodes, and to the relationship that Batman and Superman have had since World's Finest years earlier. Like, it really draws on a lot of that history, and to see Batman and Superman sort of talk to each other in such a familiar way, but to get so, like, they're both, like, cutting into each other, like, they know how to kind of hurt the other one, or to kind of get at the other one's ego in a way, and you see that in part 1, as you mentioned, when Batman's sort of trying to convince Superman to help, and then at the end there, when Batman's kind of trying to give Superman some comfort and be like, hey, look, he's gone, it's over now, everything's done, and Superman just doesn't want to hear it. So.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting dynamic. Beyond that, too, the flip side, you have the two of the biggest, most important villains in the DCAU working together in a It's a very odd dynamic with the serious. I mean, they're both serious characters, but for some reason, Corey Burton's robotic Brainiac going up against Michael Ironside's Darkseid. Just, it works in such a weird way. There's such a weird dynamic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the voice performances, but it works in such a weird way. The characters themselves, clearly they have mutual hatred for Superman, but Darkseid's not looking to destroy planets. He wants to rule planets. Brainiac just wants the information and wants to kill everybody. So I think as far as plot is concerned, it was that was an interesting wrinkle, having two massive Superman supervillains working together for the common goal. And of course, you're waiting for the shoe to drop also as the viewer as to who's going to turn on who first.
Right, supervillain team-ups never end well, generally.
Nope. There's always somebody that decides they want to be in charge, and when it's weirdly satisfying when Darkseid finally turns on Brainiac and the whole plan sort of gets upset. I really liked this episode's plot. I think it's done really well. It's fun. I think it does enough callbacks to previous series. Obviously, we're fresh off of Legacy and a lot of Superman episodes, but it does enough callbacks where it feels familiar, but it also establishes some stuff going forward that will be important later down the line in Unlimited, and reestablishes those characters of both Darkseid and Brainiac as important parts of the Justice League lore going forward. I gave plot a 8 out of 10 for my score, and it sounds to me like that might be something similar to what you scored it.
Yes, I gave it a 7 out of 10, so I'm right in that same ballpark there, as we often are on our scores. It's really good, and there's also some nice... It's really understated. They're not hitting you over the head with it yet, but there's a lot of subtle world building with Hawkgirl in this episode. Mm-hmm. Of course, the end of Season 2 is Star-Crossed and the Thanagarian invasion and all that. But there's a lot of... the episode opens with Hawkgirl kind of being a little homesick, and she's giving what we now know, having hindsight, to be just a complete BS story to the Martian Manhunter about sort of her origins. And then while they're kind of going through Brainiac's ship, you see all of these different screens that have images of various planets on them, and Martian Manhunter mentions, there might be some information about Thanagar somewhere on the ship. Mm-hmm. And Hawkgirl just and again, in the moment, it's not done over dramatically where it's very clear foreshadowing, but she's like, we just gotta focus on Superman right now.
Right.
We can't worry about that right now. And it's subtle, but knowing where we're going in the future, it's a nice little bit of extra layering that they didn't have to do.
Yeah.
But because they did it, when you go back and watch this, previous episodes are enhanced by knowing what you're going back for. And I think that's one of the best things about the DCAU, is being able to rewatch and notice things that come back later in the series, especially with Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. That was one of the hallmarks of this series, I think, especially, and a lot of that comes, I think, from Dwayne McDuffie being hired as the head writer during Justice League Season 2, and then, of course, all the way through Unlimited. And just having those threads that build very nicely to the big crescendo of the big epic space invasion at the end of the series.
Yeah, the continuity is important to the creators, and they know that it's important to the fans, so they did enough where they, like you said, they've layered it very, very well. One plot point before we move on that we just mentioned that was pretty comedic was we were discussing as to who decided that there was going to be the base, Brainiac's base was going to be a giant asteroid shaped like Brainiac and Darkseid's heads combined.
Yeah, because it's definitely like Darkseid's chin and eyes. Right. So we have to imagine there was like a conference call. Like I imagine maybe like Calabac was there, and
he's taking minutes.
Yes, he's got little glass. I think a scene like that actually happens in Tom King's Mr. Miracle book. By the way,
that's so great.
Where like him and Mr. Miracle are like sitting at a conference table negotiating something.
Tremendous.
But yes, and we were just imagining like. Where Brainiac and Darkseid come to this agreement, and Darkseid's like, alright, but first we need to carve my eyes and face into the side of this asteroid. And Brainiac's like, well, alright, but I also want my logo carved into the top of it, and that's how the tunnels will enter. For you to enter will be in the shape of my logo. And I just imagine the negotiating going back and forth as they're trying to decide what their evil villain lair will look like.
It's so funny.
It's so great. It was
a very, that was a very, subtle nod, I feel like, to Super Friends, because it was, it's so ridiculous. Like, yes. They went through, first of all, thinking about it, Brainiac doesn't care. Like, he's not going to go through the process of carving an asteroid into his face or into his logo, but Darkseid, you mentioned, his ego is large enough for that to be commissioned. But when did he decide that this was going to be commissioned? How long did it take? These are the questions that I would ask Bruce Timm if I ever got a chance to. Like, okay, in the episode Twilight, who carved the giant asteroid, and how long did that take? Yes, we need answers.
But hey, Brainiac cares about his branding, so he had to make sure his logos are everywhere.
Logo is everywhere.
Speaking of Bruce Timm, we should just mention as we're wrapping up plot here that the episode, both parts were written by Rich Fogel and Bruce Timm, so as you can tell, Bruce Timm definitely had a lot. Definitely likes to be very hands-on when it comes to any of the Fourth World Kirby stuff.
Totally and completely understandable. The other plot point that we didn't really get a chance to talk about as we move on here was the New Gods, like Forager.
Yes.
Forager is a person too. The New Gods kind of realizing that the people on their planet that live below them are valuable also. It was kind of a weird...
It was like the monarchy learned a lesson. Like, there's a little bit of that, like, class or perhaps race, racial undertones to it, but it's kind of glossed over mostly because...
It doesn't really fit.
It's briefly mentioned in part 1 that Batman and Wonder Woman meet Forager. He saves them from a giant lizard, and then he mentions, oh no, I'm just a lowly bug. And then, at the end of part 2, as all of New Genesis has to evacuate in their Sky City, it's mentioned that Forager sort of protected and hid them in his hive during the storm until the storm passed. And Highfather's like, hey, I guess some people that aren't gods are all right too.
Yeah, it was a very... I didn't feel like it fit very well with the episode, but...
Yeah, agreed.
All right, moving on, let's talk about music, Liam. Music in this episode, I thought, generally speaking, comparing this to the very first, for the Season 1 premiere, which of course we covered back in the archives, music has completely shifted as far as I'm concerned. Sounds a lot more comfortable, a lot more natural sounding, a lot more familiar. And in this episode we get some, because we have Batman, because we have Superman, we have some nods to the old classics, played subtly in certain scenes, which I thought was fantastic. There is I thought that the scenes with the New Gods and Forager and that very ending scene where they sort of reunite, I thought the music in that scene set a very interesting tone. I thought it mirrored very well, actually, with the music at the end of Apocalypse Now, like the very sad piano music. Like, it reminded me of that, except it wasn't. It was a different tone. It was set, it was a happy ending as opposed to a sad ending. But it was done. It was a good atmosphere that they set, I felt like, for that scene. And, Brainiac didn't get his standard Superman weird warbly sound in this episode, but I felt like...
$6 million man type
exactly.
Noise, yeah.
But I thought that the music set a great tone in almost every scene, especially in the battle between Superman and Darkseid. I went ahead and gave music a fairly strong 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I went 6 out of 10. I liked it a lot. It's good. It holds back where I think it needs to hold back. Mm-hmm. The whole and this maybe goes back into a little bit of plotting, but the whole thing to me feels it's paced very Star Wars-esque to me, this whole two-parter, in the sense that we're cutting between, the one-on-one battle to the big space battle to the individuals sort of running away on New Genesis. Just the way it cut always felt very Star Wars. So a lot of the background music, I thought, felt very Star Wars-y to me, like some of the space battle scenes and like how the score shifted. But then when it's just Superman and Darkseid, it's much more like one of the lightsaber duel scenes, in say Return of the Jedi or something, where the music is much more understated and sort of used more to create more drama. But yeah, hearing Shirley Walker's Superman and Batman themes again was really nice. And yeah, I thought they did a really solid job with it overall. I thought it added where it needed to add, and wasn't so overbearing either.
And to that point, I think there was not one specific scene where it was, oh, this is great. So no. I could understand where it wouldn't. It's not detrimental. There's nothing wrong with the score. It's just there was nothing that blew you away with it.
That exactly. Like it's good, and I want to make it clear I did like it. I wouldn't put this in sort of like the upper echelon of great musical performances.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a gander at animation and visuals, Liam. There are some updated character designs, as we sort of alluded to in our reviews of some of the episodes from Season 1. Some of the characters have been redesigned. Superman lost his cheekbones. Wonder Woman lost her cheekbones.
Yes.
We also have... with the return of Darkseid, we have sort of an updated face for him, some more detail. Hard to tell whether or not that was just a decision to make it look more like the classic comic book, or if it was as a result of the battle between him and Superman in the last fight in Legacy. Hard to say.
I will say, I like that we can at least sort of logic it away. Like, he probably has more cracks on his head now, but you can say, it's because Superman blew up his skull the last time we saw him. Right. So... there's at least some logic. Unlike, say, the Joker, who just didn't have lips for a while and had black eyes and then suddenly didn't.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain.
That Darkseid's look is still pretty faithful to what he looked like in Superman. Yeah, maybe he's a little older, or he's been a little. He has a few more scars from his battle with Superman. But yeah, I like to look at him. Calabac, Desaad, Steppenwolf all look almost exactly the same.
Yep.
Maybe sharpened up a little bit just to fit more into the Justice League character designs, but
Brainiac's colors I feel like are a little more dull, not as bright purple as usual, darkened a little bit, which was good. I think the visuals for this episode were really, really, really strong. I struggle to think of anything. I don't, I think I just don't care. I didn't care for the New Genesis storyline so much.
Yeah.
So it's very.
There's some nice animation in that scene, like when Wonder Woman's chasing Light Ray through the city, and there's really cool like sweeping shots as he's flying around buildings and stuff. So, right, I wouldn't say it's bad, but yeah, that's probably the least visually exciting part of the episode is when Wonder Woman and Batman are kind of just standing around in broad daylight, chatting for a lot of that. So
agreed. I think animation was strong in this episode. It's a good, strong, good-looking episode. Went ahead and gave it a 7 out of 10 for the score. What about you?
Yeah, I went 8 out of 10. There's a lot of digital animation used as well. Some of the ships in space at the start of the episode. Some of the when Superman's plugged into the whatever they're using him as a conduit to power this incredible energy weapon that they're trying to make. All of the energy effects appeared to be digital to me, and putting digital effects on top of a 2D drawn character, I think, can look a little dodgy a lot of times. But I thought they did an excellent job, and the visual of Superman, not so subtly in the crucifix pose as Superman's a Jesus allegory. If you've never noticed, but with all the energy coming on him, the Brainiac symbol on his forehead as he's sort of being tortured, shot with so much energy, you see a skeleton and things like that. I thought that was all really good. And then the final fight. First, the fight, I thought, as brief as it is between Darkseid and Orion, it's really good because it's mostly Darkseid just beating up on Orion and stuff like that. But then to go from that into this really physical, angry, vicious fist fight between Darkseid and Superman as to end the episode that's all done really, really well, and it's just two guys wailing on each other, but it works so well, and you feel the emotion. And of course, I think it's also good for us because we just watched Legacy. So those type of emotions that where Superman's head space was in that episode is still so fresh to us. That having that helped. But yeah, it's just so well done. It's just so it's just these two men who hate each other more than anything. These two gods, pounding on each other. It's really, really well done. Yeah,
I concur. All right, Liam, let's move on to voice acting, our final category of the day. Voice acting, we have a jam-packed all-star cast here.
Oh my goodness, yes.
A lot of returning vets. First of all, the first voice you hear in the entire episode is the living legend himself, Corey Burton.
Oh, yeah?
Who does, 8 voices in this. He plays Steppenwolf, he plays Forager, he plays Brainiac.
Yeah.
I think he played a couple other people too, probably.
Yeah, at least one of the, I think he played one of the other, Apocalypse Soldiers or something as well.
Sounds about right. Dude just is the GOAT.
He's tremendous, and it's so good to hear, again, as we mentioned, after not having a lot of callbacks to Season 1 in Justice League, to have Corey Burton back, and as he always does when he's in an episode playing 3 or 4 roles, he's tremendous. Of course, you have Michael Ironside as Darkseid, who we've heaped so much praise on, and he deserves it all. He's tremendous in this episode. The dialogue between him and Superman is great. The dialogue between him and Orion, I think, is really good when he talks about I'm so glad that you didn't grow up soft and you make an old man proud and all that. It's so It's just great. It's just great Darkseid. To the very last thing he says is he's about to die, apparently, which is to call Superman a loser for quote unquote running away from him.
So good.
Yeah.
I think you're right with touching on Michael Ironside's performance. He has an opportunity, as we said, to interact with Corey Burton, which, as I already mentioned, is a weird because they're so starkly contrasted with their voice styles.
Yes.
You know, Burton is this robotic, cold, lifeless robot as Brainiac, and Darkseid is this menacing, evil, just hardened
Shakespearean monologuing, like just over the top bad guy.
Yep. And they get to interact together, and you get them, bouncing back and forth off of each other, which is really good. You also get Michael Ironside and Ron Perlman, who is returning to the series, but this is his first time as Orion in the series.
Yes, a different actor played him in Superman, but I think he's a great Orion.
Oh, he's tremendous.
He's such a great voice actor in general, but really gives that gravitas to that relationship, and I think that is probably the most interesting part of the New Genesis stuff. Is once Orion is told by the High Father, don't engage, don't go attack Darkseid. I have to go sort of commune with the source, and Orion immediately goes, all right, and then just leaves immediately, right. and goes to fight Darkseid because he just so hates this man and has wanted a chance to get at him for so long. And hasn't been able to because of this treaty, and it's like now's his chance, and he takes it.
Yep.
Yeah, Ron Perlman's tremendous. You also have some more minor roles. You had Rob Paulson, who of course played Pinky on Pinky and the Brain. I believe he was Yakko on the Animaniacs. Tons of other, I think he did voices on Tiny Toons. Like just a Warner Brothers animation legend.
There you go.
Rob Paulson as Light Ray, and Mitchell Ryan as the High Father. All really, really good. And then, of course, we have the main cast. It's George Newbern's episode as much as it is anybody's as Superman.
This is we didn't watch every episode of Season 1.
Right.
We watched a significant amount of Season 1.
Yeah.
And I felt like, of the Newbern episodes that we've seen, this was his chance to flex and show more emotion. He shows that underside anger and resentment and just being fed the heck up with Darkseid.
Yes.
And he does and like we mentioned, that line that he has with Batman at the end where, you're not always right. He communicates that side of Superman in a way, not taking anything away from Tim Daly's performances, as we've said, but he adds a little bit of an extra dimension, I think, to the Superman character with that ability to communicate that way.
Yeah, and it plays, I think, so well because in this version, it's so rare that we see Superman pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good, I think, in general for the character, because it really lends gravity to those moments when he just loses it and wants to tear into somebody, because it doesn't happen all the time. But yeah, George Newbern's incredible. Kevin Conroy in very much just a supporting role. Like we said, his back and forth with Superman in this episode's really good.
You get some Wonder Bat too going on.
True. Here. That's a lot of quips, a lot of bat quips in this episode.
Yes, indeed.
And then I actually thought this was probably Maria Canales' best episode as Hawkgirl that we've watched today.
To date, yeah, for sure.
I thought she and Carl Lumbly, of course, as Martian Manhunter, did they're really paired up throughout both parts of the episode, like we said, talking about Thanagar and all that, and I thought they did a good job together. And of course, rounding out the cast, you have Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman, who doesn't have a lot to do here, unfortunately. But I thought overall the main cast is good, and then to have such a star-studded and talented guest cast. Tara Strong also did a voice in the episode. She plays the little girl that Highfather talks to. Yes, another DC animation legend.
For sure.
Just an absolutely tremendous voice cast. One of the most talented single episode casts I think we're likely to see ever. That's why I gave voice acting a 10 out of 10.
Fantastic. And would you believe it? I also gave voice acting a 10 out of 10 for all those reasons.
I would believe it.
Yeah, you would believe it. We're related, but we don't discuss our scores
That's
before
true.
we do this. We don't sync up.
Independently
decided that together. All right. So that would bring us to the end of our episode, Liam. So let's total up those scores. At the end of the day, it looks like I come up with a final score of 33 out of 40.
And my final is right in that same ballpark, 31 out of 40.
Different scores, though.
Different.
Very different. Very different. But yeah, this is it's a good episode. We talk about rewatchability. I think with the continuity, with the importance, especially with covering Legacy and understanding what an important and pivotal episode that is to the DCAU. Plus, spoiler alert, this is not the last we see of either of these two characters, Brainiac or Darkseid. I think this is a must-watch.
Oh, absolutely. This sets the tone for... Again, it's not only, as you said, continuing previous storylines, but gives birth to the season finales of both the first and second seasons of Justice League. So, hugely important in various ways to Justice League Unlimited, and the entire DCAU. So, definitely a must-watch.
Awesome. All right, Liam, well, that will bring us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you, everybody, for checking us out. As we always say, it is always appreciated if you would leave us a 5-star review on iTunes while you still can, while iTunes is still a thing. Is that still a thing?
I think now it's called Apple Podcasts or something.
On Apple Podcasts. If you can find us on there. I'm not an Apple guy, but if you find us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review, if that is indeed still a thing, please do. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to us on Google Podcasts. There's a lot of other podcast streaming services out there. If you Google DCAU Review, whatever your podcast app that you use, I imagine that you will probably be able to find us on there and stream us. Don't forget, you can also check out the archives, Liam, at DCAUreview.com.
Yeah, and just recently we added a new category. By we, I mean you. Added a new category called the Top Picks section, which is every episode we've ever done where one of us, at least, gave an episode a 37 out of 40 or higher.
The best of the best.
Exactly.
The upper echelon, if you will.
And thanks to last week's very high-ranking episode of Superman, there's at least one episode of all 4 of the main shows in that category now. So,
which you pointed out, which is pretty cool to think about.
Yeah, if you want to look at our favorite episodes of Batman, our favorite episodes of Batman Beyond, Superman, Justice League, you can find, as I said, at least one representative from each of the main 4 shows. So, check that out. Check out all our past episodes. You'll go back and hear our earlier Justice League episodes. It's very easy to navigate the website, and you can search by tags, by show, by villain. If you want to listen to the entire Darkseid saga, we've covered every Darkseid appearance to date, with the exception of, obviously, the ones that come later. So everyone in order. So if you just want to hear the entire DCAU Darkseid saga in order, you can search by villain. But definitely check out our archives there, and I guess we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Don't forget, Liam also runs our Twitter page. Follow him at DCAU Review. A lot of great stuff happening over there. We love our community.
We just crossed 300 followers, by the way. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that is huge. It feels like just yesterday we were begging people to follow us at 100, so that's huge. Thank you guys for the love and continuing to be a part of this awesome community. We love being a part of it. We love your feedback, too, so go ahead and tweet us at DCAU Review. So until next week, I am Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on that next week's episode.
Bye-bye.